Beyond the Standard, a PCA-NJ Kids podcast. I'm your host, Maria Hagon. On this episode of Beyond the Standard, we will be talking about psychological safety and accountability. Psychological safety is the belief that members of a group can feel comfortable making mistakes, taking risks, and challenging the leader of their group without the fear of being punished or reprimanded. As I was thinking of this topic, I just so happened to be sitting on my couch watching reruns of MasterChef, a show which features a famous British chef who has a reputation for berating the contestants of the show he hosts. I chuckled to myself and I thought, wow, this show is not a psychologically safe workspace. I was then reminded of my dad, who, on the opposite side of the spectrum, has created a psychologically safe kitchen workspace. My dad is a first-generation immigrant who started working as a dishwasher in an Italian restaurant when my family moved from Mexico to Texas in the mid-90s. Throughout his 25 years working at the restaurant, he worked his way up to the role of head chef. I have fond memories of going to visit him in the kitchen before the dinner rush and seeing how the back of a busy restaurant operated. And even as a young child, I noticed how comfortable and safe his employees felt with him. Looking back as an adult, I can appreciate how hard my dad worked to make his kitchen an inclusive environment where all employees felt safe and valued. Unfortunately for some people, not all workplace environments are as psychologically safe as the one my dad strived to create. I personally have experienced both a workplace that made me feel secure and included, as well as a workplace where I felt fear, pressure, and exclusion. I can say from personal experience how much feeling safe in a role can affect how you work, the effort you put in, and your overall mental health. If you've noticed that your employees don't contribute at staff meetings, don't offer input, or don't appear emotionally invested in your program, their sense of psychological safety may be what's impacted. To better understand psychological safety, let's dive into the 4 stages that contribute to staff feeling secure in a workplace. In Timothy Clark's book, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety, he outlines 4 stages that contribute to the environment of a workplace: inclusion safety, learner safety, contributor safety, and challenger safety. Clark argues that each of these stages builds on the next, meaning that with each stage that is achieved, psychological safety will increase. In stage 1, inclusion safety, Clark states that for members of a team to feel safe, they must first feel included and appreciated. Thinking of this stage, I thought back to when I used to visit my dad in the restaurant between the lunch and the dinner service. This was a time when the cooks would make a meal for all of the staff. Everyone would sit in the back dining room and eat together. This included kitchen staff, wait staff, managers, and even staff's family members. I personally loved going to eat all the spaghetti I wanted. This tradition made all the staff feel included, united, and comfortable with each other. My dad would always mention that whenever there was a problem with a customer, the waitstaff were always ready to stand up for the cooks or vice versa. I don't believe this would have happened if they hadn't been as close. Imagine having an environment where your teachers, paras, coaches, office staff, or anyone else who works in your center will all stand by each other, support each other, and ultimately feel like important members of a family. Consider for a moment, how does your program intentionally create a culture of inclusion and collaboration between staff members? The second stage of psychological safety is learner safety, or the freedom to ask questions, experiment, and make mistakes without the fear of pushback or getting in trouble. I remember one night, my dad came home from work and was telling my mom a story about a worker he had hired as a dishwasher. This is how my dad started. He was always more than willing to give workers the opportunity to move up and show that they'd learn new skills. This new hire was interested in moving up to the pizza station, so my dad told him to go make a pizza. We couldn't contain our laughter as my dad described the most awful pizza he had ever had. The toppings were out of order, and the pizza was burned in some places while also being completely raw in the middle. As we laughed about the terrible pizza, I asked my dad what he was going to do about the dishwasher. My dad shrugged his shoulders and said that tomorrow he would show him how to make a pizza the right way, and then eventually have him step into the pizza station. While I'm sure that this guy got playfully teased about his terrible pizza, I really admire how my dad didn't berate him for his mistake, and instead gave him the opportunity to learn. I think we can all take a lesson from the situation and think of how we treat the people we work with when they want to learn or when they make a mistake. If you were to see a staff member practicing improper hand washing or diaper changing, would you take the opportunity to teach them or would you yell at them? Think of how reacting in either way would impact the way that staff member feels about themselves and their capabilities. Stage 3 of psychological safety is contributor safety, or the freedom to participate as a member of the team. This centers around the belief that members of a team want to feel like their contribution is important, that they have a specific role, and they are empowered in their work. On multiple occasions, I witnessed my dad talking to his team of cooks and telling them that he wasn't going to watch over them and make sure that all of their prep was done. It was their responsibility to make sure that everything was ready for service. It would become evident if the job was not done because they would run out of prepped food for service. This way of managing led to each cook becoming more responsible for their work without my dad having to hover over everyone. An instance where this becomes relevant in schools could be in lesson planning. There might be directors out there who want to have a hand in all lesson plans for each classroom. While this situation would lead that director having control over what is happening, it takes away from accountability from staff and creates more work for that director. And you might think, well, what if they make a mistake or what if they do it wrong? Then I would remind you of stage 2 in psychological safety and the freedom to make mistakes. Mistakes are how we learn. What's more important is letting team members know that their voices matter and that they are responsible for their own success. People take more ownership over their role when their efforts, successes, and failures are their own to make and they're encouraged to explore. The last stage of psychological safety is challenger safety, or the freedom to challenge the way things are done. This means that team members can feel safe to question authority or speak honestly about a problem, as long as there are no personal attacks or malicious intent. As head chef, my dad had to work closely with the owners of the restaurant. This was a family business, and initially, the owners were very hesitant to let my dad change menu items or events. But eventually, their relationship evolved to where my dad felt safe making suggestions. For example, every year the restaurant would hold an Easter Sunday buffet. My dad noticed that customer sales were dropping for this event, leading to more food waste. He suggested to the owners that they change it to a prefix menu with limited options that were exclusive to that event. The owners listened to my dad and made the changes, eventually leading to more customers and less food waste. In a school setting, creating this kind of safety between staff and directors or owners could lead to improvements in the classroom, parent relationships, or how the school operates as a whole. Ultimately, that is the goal of this stage, to create an environment where the members of a team are in a growth mindset and contribute to the success of their workplace. Now that we've gone through the 4 stages of psychological safety, I want to come back to the big question. Why does this matter to your program, and how does this relate to accountability? Once again, I have to reflect on my own personal experience. I feel so appreciative to currently work in an environment where I feel valued and able to speak my opinions. However, this was not always my reality, and it is not the reality of many people who work in education. When I worked in an environment where I did not feel valued, my mental health suffered. My motivation was low, my accountability was low, and ultimately, my job performance was low. The research done on psychological safety has shown that if members of a team don't feel safe or valued, they will not perform at their best. This means that in a school where we are shaping young minds, if our staff is not at their best, then the children are not getting the best possible experience. Ultimately, that's why we're all here, to provide a great quality program to young children and their families. When psychological safety is achieved, members of a team feel empowered and are more willing to take on leadership roles. They feel safe that they will be supported and allowed to learn. Think of how many leaders you can create in your staff if they know you'll always be there to cheer them on. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Beyond the Standard. I hope that it gave you an opportunity to reflect on what your program environment is like and how to improve on it. I'm your host, Maria Hagon, and if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go call my dad and ask for his fettuccine Alfredo recipe.